Welcome back to the channel. This your boy, Mr. GoodBuds. We back again with another podcast session. The I almost forgot the name of my own shit. The discussion. I was about to say the Discord. Before we get started, I want to mention that I am going to get the actual Discord integration working better, or get it working, period. I know a lot of people try to jump on with me and they may have an issue, so I'm going to try to get that fixed before the next discussion podcast release. But just bear with me. Appreciate y'all for joining me. We're going to go ahead and get started. In this topic, we're going to be talking about training, specifically how I train my plants and other training options that you can look into as well. Before we get started, just a quick word from our sponsors, Mars Hydro. Mars Hydro got heat mats with digital thermostat controllers on deck now. Plant heat mats good for indoor starting to stimulate germination or root production in clones. They are IP67 waterproof and easy to clean. A heat thermal conductive metal probe to give an accurate display and fast on and off when desired temperature is reached. UL and FCC listed and 1 year warranty. The link is in the description. Make sure you hit that up, man. These are going to be perfect to get your seeds started and to get your clones going. You can put this right up under your germination mat, your plant tray, or your seed starting tray. Go on Amazon and holler at the link in the description and make sure you pick one up right away, man. And make sure you use that code too, Mr. GoodBuds. Let's get it. Alright, let's get into it. So first we're going to talk about why we train. That's the magic question. Why we train? We train for more yield. Basically, in a nutshell, everything we doing as far as training the plant is in hopes of getting a higher yield by training or manipulating that plant in a bunch of different ways. There's a bunch of different ways that you can train that plant. There's two main styles of training. We got HST, which is high stress training, and LST, which is low stress training. So we're gonna talk about. It is important for me. I use a different combination of high stress training and low stress training. The best is always for me. I would assume the best would be low stress training. The key differences being is that one is high stressful to the plant and one is low stress to the plant, or a little stress to no stress at all. So we're going to talk about how I train my plants. And before we get into that, I just want to mention that this is more so geared to photoperiod plants. I do some small training to autoflower plants when I do grow to autoflowers. And that's low stress training, which a lot of people call low stress training, but which is really bending and tying down plants, tops and stuff. A lot of people call that low stress training. I do a lot of bending and tying, and then I do light defoliation. And for the same reasons that I mentioned as I go through what I do for my photoperiod plants, for those exact same reasons, that's what I do to my autoflowers. I just keep it to just those two things, and very lightly because of the high sensitivity nature, the high sensitive nature of the autoflower. So let's get into it. So I'm gonna talk about basically how I train my plants, what I do during veg and what I do during flower, and then afterwards I'll talk about a couple of other things that I don't do, but some other options of training as well. Not every option of training is gonna be on here because I'm just gonna talk about the things that I know of, and I've tried all of this stuff except for maybe one or two things on this list that I haven't tried. But most of the training I actually do implement into my grow altogether. So you guys gonna see how basically I have a decent balanced regimen of training, of high stress training and low stress training, and what I like to do to my plants. A lot of this stuff like the way I explain these things and all the things that I do may seem kind of complicated just saying it out loud. But once you get to doing these things and they become repetition and you do them all the time, then all that is really second nature. It's just really things that you just do. I literally had to actually sit down and actually think about what I do in the garden that's considered training. That's how a part of the program this is all going to become. You're going to just do these things. But I try the best to break down the particular training that I do and when I do it. Because a lot of stuff I do it at the same time every grow. So let's get into it. So first we're going to talk about veg. So the very first training that I do during veg is topping. And over the years, I've started topping earlier and earlier and earlier. So nowadays, I like to top at the third to the fourth node. So let me explain what topping does. Basically, all the plant growth is concentrated until its main top that starts from the beginning of the plant when it grows. It does have a name. I don't remember it right now. But that top grows from the beginning and it keep going straight up. The wheat, I didn't say it. The plant will grow. The plant will grow nonstop, straight up, vertical, just like a Christmas tree if you never top it. That's all cool, but you are going to get outside and inside. You're not going to get great light penetration. The light is always at the top. So since there is no light on the sides, normally there's reflections of light, and some people actually supplement light on the side. But normally people like me, we got the regular light on top. So to increase the effectiveness of that light, we top, and what that does is cut off that main top growth, and instead of it growing straight up, it's going to start to concentrate all of that energy and spread it out into all the other tops on the plant. All the secondary tops will become main tops, and from the first top, you're going to get two main tops. And actually, what I like to do is I'll keep topping just to maintain the canopy, but the second time I top is usually after the first top. You get those two main tops, and then I top both of those. By the time you do that, you pretty much got all the tops, all the side branching on that plant are going to start to get even. And I will continue to top that plant, and a lot of things, the methodology of how I've been growing lately has changed. Now I don't care about what the plant look like. I'm going to continue to top that plant and to keep that canopy even across all the tops of however many plants that I have inside that booth. And whether it's 1 or 5, I'm going to keep topping to keep the plant canopy even. Man, in the end, that's going to give you more tops. Instead of having one big huge top, you're going to have a whole bunch of slightly smaller, a whole bunch more other secondary tops, and that helps to increase that yield. And that's basically it. And how I top is easy. All I do is one thing I like to try to explain. I don't like to top too close down to that internodal section, like where the node is, and like where the branch is and the node is branching off. I like to cut like an edge above that node. And another thing that's good about doing that is you'll start to see the tiny little new growth of the new tops underneath that. And I want to make sure I see those little specks that start to grow that become huge tops. I want to make sure I see that. So third, fourth node, you will start to see those specks on the first node and the second node and the third node. But I like to see them on the third node, and I like to have like half an inch of that top growing off of that node, so I have space to cut it. Which again is kind of, I'll talk about femming later, but that's the difference between topping and femming, for me at least. So that's the main thing that I do in veg, is top. I don't do any topping during flower for obvious reasons. The next thing that I like to do is bending, or LST, or low stress training, which we have given that name to, just bending the tops over and sometimes tying them down, but basically bending the tops over out of the way without breaking the membrane on those stems to allow penetration for side branching and other lower tops. So I do a lot of low stress training or bending here and there, just basically at my discrepancy, basically. If I feel like tops are getting too tall, which kind of goes against how I've been doing lately, because there is going to be no tops that get too tall, but that was the fight before, and what I used to do. And if you don't want to top the shit out your plant like how I do, you can always low stress train or bend down those branches. And especially with the auto flowers, there is pretty much no stress involved in bending that branch down, as long as you don't break that membrane on that stem. and usually it's pretty easy to my bad, Joy. Usually it's pretty easy to bend down those tops and keep them out the way. Now, if you're not tying them down, which is best to tie them down, and that'll make sure that those tops stay out of the way for a nicer amount of time, they will start to bend back up towards the light, but they will stay out of the way for a longer amount of time to allow for the secondary tops to grow up faster. If you don't tie them down, then that top will be turned back up the next day. But don't get me wrong, it still makes a hell of a difference for those secondary tops on the sides there. And that one day of getting that extra penetration of light does wonders. The next thing that I do is defoliation. Now, I like to do defoliation pretty much by feel. And what I mean by feel, when I do the defoliation, I like to defoliate the Hughes families. And by what I mean by the Hughes families is those big Hughes families that get Hughes. They look like big ass hands. They got the long ass stems. When they get like that, I'll cut all those families away. And I'll leave the job up to the smaller new families. And it's amazing that once you cut off those mature families, those families are replaced by the younger teenager families, and they do become mature families. If you cut all the families off of a plant, it will replace them with the new top families, and those families will grow just as fast to catch up to become that main source of those main solar panels. If you cut off those older mature plant leaves. But those leaves, those big ass leaves do leave shadows, and they do block a lot of light off your main top. So I like to defoliate just to keep those tops clear. Some of those secondary tops that you find inside that canopy, I like to get off those big ass fan leaves just to keep that light penetration going, and that'll keep that canopy growing even and strong. And there is a time period for that. It's usually about every 2 to 3 weeks during veg. Now, I do defoliate during flower with a much more specific time frame, which I'll talk about in flower. But in veg, it's usually about every 2 to 3 weeks. If it stays in veg for that long, about every 2 to 3 weeks, I take off all those mature fan leaves, and those other secondary fan leaves will start to catch up and take care of it. So, the last thing, the second to last thing, I will, first I mentioned super cropping. I don't super crop much, and like I said, it kind of goes against my whole keeping the canopy even by chopping off the heads at any time whenever I feel like they're getting out of hand. Super cropping is pretty much the same thing, but instead of bending those plants out the way slightly, we pretty much crack the membrane on the stems, and we crack them and bend them the fuck over, and so that they don't turn back up easily. And that's high stress training. That's super cropping. Super cropping works really well actually. Where those membranes crack, you actually get this strong scar tissue that grows into this knuckle, and a lot of people believe that that's like a highway of nutrients that's forced through that knuckle to those tops that's leading off of that super cropped area where you bent it at. Do the research on how accurate that is, but super cropping does work very well for evening out the canopy. And usually when I get tops that's really getting out of hand and I don't want to cut them off, which I will now, but I didn't want to cut them off completely before, I just pretty much crack that stem right there and let that boy slump over, and that's where it'll stay. It will heal, and the end of that will start to turn up again. Getting the camera, it'll start to turn up again, but that joint where I cracked it at, it's done. It ain't gonna turn back up like that. So that leaves you a lot more time to let secondary tops grow up and become more uniform with the main tops. I don't do it often. Even before, I never super crop that often. Usually I super crop really lanky, stretchy plants. When I don't have really stretch issues or lanky plants, I don't really super crop or have the need for it that much. But it does help a lot. Now the last thing that I do during veg, which is religious to do at the end of veg, the last week of veg before I flip, I will lollipop. Now lollipopping is a type of training where you picture how lollipop look with the long stem and the head, is where you cut off all the main framework of the plant. You basically cut everything down to the skeleton. So basically, when I do that, I'll pick a level where I feel like it's tall enough, or where I want those tops, and that's what I want. Any branch that makes it up past that point, it survives, and I just trim that all the way down the entire stem. Anything on that stem, if it's a top on that stem, it gets cut off unless it meets that recommendation. If it meets that top, if it doesn't, it gets cut the fuck off. Anything that doesn't meet that level, it gets cut off, and I cut everything off the plant. And what that does is especially great for the flower. It allows the plant not to waste time growing tiny, useless, small shit. It basically makes it focus its energy on the branches that it has left, and put energy into growing those tops and developing those main tops that you leave it with. It's really great for using the scrog net, which I'll get into in flower, because I don't use a scrog net during veg. But it works really great in combination with the scrog net for light penetration. Now, the reason I try not to do that too close to flower, even though it's mainly for flower, is because it is very stressful. That is a very high form of high stress training. It stresses the fuck out the plant. So you want to give it at least like a week to recover. And I've done times where I haven't, and the plant did suffer in the beginning of the flower. And when I give it that extra week, and I know you guys have seen me not do that, so I'm saying that to you right now. Give your plant that week so that it can recover from that lollipopping, because it's gonna need that. And once it goes into flower, that everything you cut off from that plant is gonna be gone. All those old parts where you cut off, they're gonna be scabbed up, and the main framework and the skeleton of that plant is gonna become that's gonna become the body of that plant, and it's gonna focus. Now you will see little stuff start to grow back, man. Those plants will grow, boy. They do not like to die. They do not like to give up. So you will see new tops form at the end of flower. There will be tiny tops at the bottom of your plant where you lollipopped it. But it's a very great way for training that plant. Another thing what's good about lollipopping is not only is that stuff small, but in that scrog, a lot of that light is not going to make it past that scrog net. And even if it does, that stuff at the bottom is not getting the right amount of light so that they can grow the way that they should grow. So it's just a waste of energy on the plant as well. And that's another reason you just cut all that stuff off during lollipopping, so it doesn't even waste its time on that stuff. Alright, so next we're going to get into flower. So that's all the training that I do for flower. For veg. Now, flower, there's not much I do during flower, but I do some very important key things during flower that we're going to talk about right now. One, the screen of green, or the scrog net. The scrog net is very, very important for my grow. And maintaining the canopy, evenness, and all that is detrimental. I like growing plants without scrog nets, and they have been pretty cool. But when it comes to light penetration and yield and quality, that scrog net is king. Because quality and quantity pretty much go hand in hand. Like, you want quality over quantity, but the things that you do to get quantity is going to give you quality. Like with the scrog net, the purpose of the scrog net, first, there's two scrog nets that I use. When I start flower, I use a 3-inch scrog net. That's the scrog net with 3-inch holes. And that's perfect for the footprint of a light. And what I mean by that is that pretty much that light is shining down, and every 3 inches is a penetration of light. I don't want to say this video got to be monetized. I don't even want to say what I really wanted to say, but there's holes in that net, and you want that light to penetrate in that 3-inch, and it's a beam of light for every 3 inches, pretty much. That's how the footprint of the light in my head looks. And so when you use that scrog net, it pretty much allows you to put one top per 3 inches. And so per footprint, it allows you to match that footprint like a puzzle piece to your canopy. And so I try to get one top per 3-inch square. And so what I meant by quantity and quality, when you have that spread out like that, that's going to give you more quantity. And at the same time, you're getting better light penetration, and you have a more even canopy, so every top is getting the same amount of light and the same amount of intensity, and that's going to give you better quality. And so that's what I mean by quality and quantity kind of go hand in hand almost. And a lot of things, when you train things for quantity or you train it for quality, you're going to get the opposite in return as a consolation prize. And so with the screen and green, so that's the reason that I use religiously start flower, first day of flower, is getting that 3-inch strong net. Now on the 4th week of flower, you're going to start to get some weight. That's at the end. That's after the stretch is over, and then a couple more weeks for development. That's when those bugs are going to start to get heavy. So you're going to want some relief, some support for those. And so that's why I like the 6-inch scrog net, because you're not going to get those 3 inches, which will be cool, but it's just not necessary. Because you already trained for footprint. Now the 3-inch scrog net the 6-inch scrog net that you're adding during the 4th week of flower is for support. And how this helps is actually still increasing your yield, because that's going to help to take that weight off of those stems. In return, it's going to allow your plant during flower to be less stressed by the weight on its stems and continue to put on more weight and more weight and more weight and make those fat as it can. If it doesn't feel like it's being weighed down, it's going to continue to put on more weight, and that's going to help increase your yield. So those two things are very important. And even without the increase of yield, you need the support, because those are going to start to fall down, which is going to hurt your footprint, which is going to hurt what you created with the 3-inch scrog net in the beginning. So either way, you're going to want the double scrog net for the most part. I have tried to get through grows without the 2nd scrog net, but even with light, all the leaves was falling all over the place. So it helps regardless. That's what I do. That's the first thing I do. The first training that I do during flower. Not the first thing that I do. It is the first thing that I do, but not the second. Whatever. The next training that I do is defoliation during flower. Now, I do defoliation during flower at a specific time. Not like during veg, when the plant is vegging and it's just creating more leaves and more leaves, because it's not like that during flower. The plant doesn't create more fan leaves, not like it does during veg. Now, there is a period during the stretching period where the plant does act a lot like it does when it's in veg, and it does grow fan leaves. So, after I flip into the flower, I wait till the 3rd week, and after that 3rd week, after that stretch is done, creating those flowers, I just got distracted as hell. I defoliate, and so I'll take off, and I do a massive defoliation, like not real bad, but pretty much all the mature fan leaves get cut off. All the fan leaves get cut off except for what's connected to those buds, to the main, what's connected to those stalks. And those will still grow during flower, but not as much. That's when I hit it with a massive defoliation. Now the second time I hit it with the defoliation is during the 5th week, and this is slightly before the end of the flower. Now I choose this time because I feel like in the last 4 weeks, the last 3 to 4 weeks is major weight packing on, and during major weight packing, you want major light penetration, and that's when I crank my light up to 100%, and I want everything. And at the same time, to help out with that, I'm gonna hit it with another, not massive defoliation, but a decent defoliation to clean it up and just get it ready to finish out strong. And so that's pretty much. I'll look at my paper while y'all looking. Fuck it, I don't care. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I do for training and flower, and that's all I do for training for the most part for my plants, period. Now, there are a few other different training techniques that I haven't tried. I'm going to name these things real quick. You guys comment down below if you tried them, and let me know how it worked out for you. So some other techniques. Femming. I was already talking about femming. Now, remember how I talked about specifically how I like to cut like on that stem as it grows out of the node. Now the difference in femming is when you pretty much cut the new growth, and like where the new families is like sprouting out and it's not even stem yet, and you just cut straight across that shit. Fuck it, and that's why it's called Fem. Fuck I missed, because a lot of people, one person tried to hit the stem, they was blowing before they did it. They hit the leaves instead, and it was a disaster. But it causes a mutation where those tops start growing all over the place. You end up, instead of just 2 main tops, you might get 3, 4, or 5 main tops. And I've done it a few times, actually by accident. When I filmed the few times I filmed, I really didn't do it on purpose. I actually missed, and I did get like 3 tops, 5 tops. It's pretty weird. It's pretty cool too. It's pretty much the same objective of topping, but instead of just doubling the top, you get a whole bunch more tops. It still changes that energy and forces it throughout the rest of the plant, but you get a whole bunch more tops, and some pretty interesting mutated growth. Another thing that I haven't tried yet is mainlining or manifolding, and that's basically where people will basically top the plant, but they strip the entire plant bare down to the stem. And they create 2 main shoots, where basically they top it in a way so it's very symmetrical, and they get 2 main shoots that grow, and everything grows off of that, and they try to keep it very symmetrical, kind of like a manifold, which is like kind of like maybe an intake manifold, or maybe a garden hose manifold, but basically where the energy will go into that plant, it gets spread evenly. And the idea behind that is faster growth, and even distribution of energy and nutrients and food. To me, it looks very painful for the plant. There is some stunting, some major stunting. It is very, very high stressful. And that's something I would do to my plants. It's purely experimental. And I've seen a lot of success. I've seen a lot of cool things, a lot of interesting growths, mainlining and manifolding. It's not my thing, but it is pretty cool, and it is something that I may try in the future just to see how it turns out. For me, I don't believe that it's very helpful. It may be helpful in the long run, but you still got to think about all the time that your plant is stunted and the time that you got to wait for that plant to recover and veg and bounce back and start growing. All that stuff makes a difference in yield, and time is money, and yield is time, and money is yield. so if it's taking too much time, then you lose in yield. So people gotta take that into consideration when mainlining and manifold. That's why I haven't done it yet. And the last thing I'll talk about is the sea of green. And for me, that's the no training method. The sea of green is basically when you flip a whole bunch of smaller plants into flower, and basically to fill your canopy or your desired growth area, you just fill it up with a whole bunch of clones and maybe baby plants or smaller plants in smaller pots. Just fill it up as much until you fill up that coverage area that you want and flip it into flower. Pretty much no training. There may be training involved in it, but I don't think there's much training involved in it from the way it sounds. I would like to try it. I don't see why you would be topping pretty much everything. If you're doing a sea of green and you just flipping a bunch of small plants, I would imagine that most of the training is out of the window and you just flipping it into flower and just letting it go. And the amount of plants is going to cover the coverage area of the amount of product or return that you wanted. But comment down below, because I haven't tried it, and a lot of those last things on there I haven't tried. So comment down below if you tried them, if you like them. Appreciate y'all for joining me for another podcast. Make sure y'all like this video, y'all comment down below, and y'all subscribe to the channel. I'm going to try to make sure that I get the Discord integration going better or working properly. And also, appreciate y'all for hollering at me on all podcasts directories or anywhere we all watch our podcast. Holler at me, follow me, like me, subscribe me. Appreciate y'all for doing that, man. We been doing big things with the podcast, and I'm really enjoying doing them as well, man. So appreciate y'all, man. Like I said, holler at the sub channels and holler at me on the gram, man. We out.